Welcome back. In this video we'll be exploring the basic modify commands. The first one in the modify panel is the move command. We've looked at this before and we've used it by clicking on the button for move. When I hover over the button, it informs me that the move command does a certain thing. It also shows me, just like in the draw menu, what keystrokes to enter in order to start the move command. So if I were to be working on something in the drawing area and type M, I could finish M-O-V-E. I don't need to. I can see that AutoCAD intuits that I want to run the move command. So M enter starts the move command. It asks me to select objects, which I'm going to do. And then I'm going to hit enter because I have selected all the objects that I want. It asks me then for a base point, and I'm going to click a point on an object so that we can see how these base points work. I'm going to start by clicking the end point of this line, and you can see my O snaps are turned on and the end point is being identified. I have those objects now selected, and I'm going to place them, the second point, the midpoint of this line. So I moved them from this point to this point, and we saw those objects move. If I do a Control Z, Control Y to undo and redo, you can see where that has moved. The copy command works exactly the same way. If I hover over it, I can see what the keystrokes are, C-O-P-Y. We've already used the C to start a circle, so when I type CO, AutoCAD automatically intuits that I want to run the copy command, and I type enter because yes, I do. It asks me to select an object. I'm going to pick this ellipse and then hit enter so that I can identify that I have completed selecting objects. Then I'm going to pick a base point for this object. Again, I'll pick a base point on this line right at the end. I'll pick my next point on the middle and my next point on the end of that line. And what I have now is 3 ellipses. The command is still active, actually. I have to hit escape or enter to finish the command. Those 3 ellipses that I've made, if I were to align their center points, I would have a line that was exactly like this one, because I started here, placed the second one here, and the third one here. Hit escape to release that object. I'm going to demonstrate the next command is the stretch command. Stretch command will take endpoints of different objects and it will stretch the endpoint of those objects to a new location. So we have to think carefully about how we make a selection and what we're trying to accomplish. So I'm going to show you this in 2 different ways. First, by stretching the end of this rectangle, and second by stretching, let's say, the endpoints that are surrounded in this selection set. So let's take a look. I can click the button, I could type the word stretch, or I could simply begin typing the word stretch, S-T-R, and stretch will immediately be the command that AutoCAD intuits. I hit enter to start the stretch command. It says select objects. It's lying to you slightly. What it really wants is you to select endpoints. What I have to do is select endpoints of this rectangle. If I use a sweep, I haven't surrounded enough information for it to know what to do. I have to use a crossing to effectively create a stretch command. When I hit enter saying that I have finished selecting points, it now asks me for a base point. I'm going to pick a base point over in the black area of the screen, away from all my objects. That's my base point. As I move my mouse, what you'll notice is that those endpoints that I selected are now following my mouse in relationship to the condition that I established by clicking that base point. And I'm able to stretch those. Let's look at it one more time. STR, enter. I'm going to select the objects enter. This time I'm going to pick a point on the objects. I'm going to zoom in so that my cursor is not so obnoxiously large. I'm going to pick a point right on the middle, and you can see that it is now following my mouse much more precisely. And I can set that down where I want. Looking at the stretch command again, str enter. I'm going to select objects. This time I'm going to cross a window and notice what I've got. I've got 2 endpoints on the lines. I've got 2 endpoints on the arcs. That nice tangent is going to get messed up. I'm going to hit enter because I'm done selecting objects. I'm going to pick a base point that is on the quadrant of this ellipse, and I'm going to stretch it to the quadrant of the other quadrant of the same ellipse. And what you can see is those 4 endpoints are all moving as a constellation. They're all moving together, which means that my endpoints are still meeting at a corner, but the tangent has gotten destroyed. Now that we have a bunch of drawings on our screen, we have some new things to play with. I'm going to go ahead and show you the rotate command next. To start the rotate command, again, there's the button, or type rotate. RO starts the command for rotate. Enter. Select some objects. I'm going to pick these 3 ellipses. I'm going to hit enter to say that I have completed my selection set, and I will pick a base point. For clarity, I'm going to pick a base point that's at the center of one of these curves on my screen. I'm going to pick a base point that's at the center of this arc. Notice my O-snaps are having kind of a hard time finding the center. Let's take a look. I don't have the center O-snap turned on, so I'm going to turn that one on. Now I can come over here and pick that center point. That's my base point. Now notice what's happening. AutoCAD has asked me specify rotation angle. I could type an angle. I could type 10, 15, 20, 23.4, whatever I'd like, and they would rotate around that angle. It starts measuring from an angle that is considered to be 0. 0 is directly to the right of whatever my base point is. So right now they haven't rotated at all, but as I move up, it's counting in degrees how far they're rotating. That's about 45 degrees. I could click that, or I could type 45, enter. The next command we see is the mirror command. Now mirror sometimes is awkward for people. I've zoomed out a little bit so that I can mirror some of these objects. In fact, I'm going to do a mirror of all of them. If I hover over the command, I get a brief explanation of how it works. MI enter. I'm going to select objects by sweeping over them all and hit enter to tell it I have completed selecting objects. Then it asks me specify first point on mirror line. So what it will do is it will reflect these objects across a line. Here we go. I'm going to click a point in space. And what you can see is it's giving me a preview of where those new objects will end up as they reflect across that orange line. I'm going to click another point in space. To finish the mirror command, it asks you, erase the source objects, yes or no. Notice the no is in brackets. Any value that's in those brackets is what AutoCAD will accept as a default if you hit enter. In this case, I do not want to erase my source objects, so no is the default, so I can hit enter. I could have also typed in. The scale command is next. Scale will allow us to make things larger or smaller. Now that I have 2 sets of objects that are similar, they've been mirrored, one set from the other, it will be obvious when something changes size. So I'm going to start the scale command. I hover over that and I see, oh, I can type the word scale, and That's how it behaves. SC, immediately AutoCAD intuits that I want to type scale. I hit enter to accept that, and it asks me to select objects. I'm going to pick this shape here, the ellipse with the rectangle, both of them together. Now we can see there are two of these on the screen, and I'm going to change the size of the one I've selected. It says select objects. I've finished selecting objects, so I hit enter. It asks me for a base point. The object will be scaled around a point on the screen. I'm going to pick a point on the object because that makes it easier. Now, as I move my mouse, every unit that I move my mouse is a full 100% larger. So if I move the mouse 2 units over, the object is now twice as large. If I move the mouse to some fraction of a unit over, then the object will be smaller. So it's asking me for that second point. I could click. That would be sort of the way to eyeball it. I could also type a number, let's say 2, and it makes it twice as large. Let's run that one more time. SC, enter. I'm going to pick an object. I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to select a base point, this time at the center. And then I'm going to type a number smaller than 1, 0.5, enter. And it is half size. Our next command will be trim. In order to display what trim does, I need some lines that overlap. Starting the trim command, I can mouse on top of this. I see that I could type the word trim. TR, and immediately AutoCAD is there for me. Enter. Now, read the command line. It says, select cutting edges. What it's asking me for here is, what are the knife edges of my trim, or which objects are going to slice? I'm going to pick these 2 lines as my knife edges, or as my cutting edges, and trim out the arc that's in the middle. I hit enter. Now it asks me to select the objects that I'd like to trim. Any object that crosses those 2 lines is fair game. I could click on this one, and it previews what would happen. I could click over here on this, and it previews what would happen. That line would disappear. But what I'm interested in is taking the middle out. And I'm done with that command. I hit enter. Let's practice that one again. I'll go over to another location where I have some lines that cross. TR, enter to start the command. This time, notice what's in the brackets. Select all. If I click enter, it will select everything as a cutting edge. Then I can pick any line that crosses another, and it will get rid of that line for me. Notice this line here no longer crosses any other line, so I cannot trim it. There's nothing to trim it against. The next command to look at is the fillet command. If I hover over that command, I can see that fillet is F-I-L-L-E-T. As soon as I type F, fillet is active, and I can accept that by hitting enter. Fillet will bring 2 things to a point. Right now my current radius is set to 0. That's in the command line. If I click 2 objects, 1, 2, I can get a fillet between those 2 objects. Let's try the fillet command again. F, enter, and I'm going to pick this line and this line. You can do this on any scale. F, enter, I'm going to pick this line and this line, and it rockets off the screen and finds out where those 2 lines intersect. Let's do offset. So offset is a very handy command. It's found right here. The command is offset. There's a little explanation that pops up for you. In order to start that command, O, and immediately I see the offset command is ready to go. Hit enter. It asks me to specify a distance. Now looking at my screen, I recall that this line was 10 units long. And so I'm going to offset 10. I'm going to pick an object to offset. Then it asks me for a direction to offset. Does it want to offset this direction? I'll move my mouse to the right, and I get a new line that is 10 units away from the old line. And that 10 units is measured perpendicularly from the line. That command is still active. I just need to click and tell it which direction. And again, and again. Offset works on curves as well. I'm going to escape so that I can change my offset distance and zoom in to a smaller curve. Let's say O, enter, 0.5, enter. This is a half unit offset. And that's a brief introduction to the Modify menu.